Just think, Megatron. 8 years ago, you was the first to be reviewed. And I wasn't even here for that. I guess it's what they say is true. Good things do come back. Here's to 8 more years, boss. Hello, everybody. Sparkster1701 here. And we're taking a look here at our 8th anniversary at the figure we started it all with. This is Generation 1 Megatron. Megatron, of course, is the leader of the Decepticons, and he has always been a controversial figure. And that controversy stems a lot from his alternate mode, but we'll cover that in a little more detail later on. This version of Megatron was available on shelves in 1984. He would also be on shelves in 1985. He would be removed from retail shelves in 1986 and would become a mail-away exclusive. For part of that time, like with Optimus Prime, Megatron would include a gold certificate with his mail-away versions. That was done as a special promotional offer for the animated film. Now, of course, a fair amount of the controversy comes from the fact that Megatron transforms into a gun. More specifically, he becomes a version of a Walther P-38 that was featured in the television series The Man from U.N.C.L.E., as he was not the only version of that gun to be released, because there was one done up without the added accessories. So right here is the similar toy, the Microchange Robo P-38. This is an authentic original from Japan. I bought it a number of years ago, and it has been reviewed here on the channel. Not the best, but it has been. This version of the P-38 was made as an airsoft gun. It includes some plastic bullets, and with the squeeze of a trigger, it can be fired. Airsoft guns are a popular thing, especially in Japan, due to the fact that Japan has considerably more strict gun laws than what are featured here in the United States. In fact, the Japanese have long joked about it. One notable example is in the classic video game Silent Hill 2, where you find your first gun in that game in a shopping cart. It kind of seems to point that how easy it is that we can get a gun here in America, that all you need to do is go to a simple store and you can buy one. That is almost relatively true. Slightly exaggerated, but when you think about it, it holds a lot of weight. But this one was just one of many of them that were released in that time period, because these were brought out in the mid-1970s, because this one did come open, so I have opened it, and it has a toy catalog in there from the 1970s. It's been a while, and some of you may not want to go look for that video. We'll dig out some of the paperwork, especially since I had some of it out on Prime. That didn't take much effort to get out. You see right here is the instructions for that version. On the back side, it shows some of the others that were available. As you can see, a lot of the other Microman toys that were available. Some of them should be familiar, like right over here is Reflector. And then over here we have a few of the cassette figures. You know, like there's Frenzy, there's Laserbeak, and there is Ravage. And of course down here we have a lot of the other cars that were available. See, Cliff Jumper, Bumblebee, Windcharger, Gears, Huffer. Right there's Bumble Jumper or Bumper, but in a blue color. And we also have Brawn, but Brawn's here in a light tan color. That would be the color used for Outback. And then down here at the bottom, we have Soundwave, and right here in the corner is Megatron himself. And then you can take a look here on the inside. Shows you how he was transformed back then. And how to attach here his sword and his gun. And then this over here shows you how to load the bullets and fire at the target that came with the toy. So there you go, you got a piece of history. And then right here we have a Japanese toy catalog. Down here you can see the trademark year is 1974. So this is a rather old figure. We'll take a quick look inside. So I figure a few of you are itching to see some of the Microman stuff. And of course, you can try to pause and look this over if you actually can read Japanese. That's something I really need to learn sometime, being an otaku. I like this one here. This micro cassette becomes a helicopter. And we got one that becomes a motorcycle. Those would have been kind of neat to have. I mean, yeah, they'd look a little silly without the guy on it, but hey, who cares? That's what imagination's for. Then you got a few more guns that were available. Like here is an M1910. And this one's here is one that I know is a popular one, a Smith & Wesson 44. You can go all Dirty Harry. What do you think, Larry? Do you feel lucky? And then, of course, here is Megatron in both of his forms. One with all the added pieces, the Uncle version, and, of course, the one that this all came from, the one that's a regular gun. And here's a version of Soundwave, but if you take a look, the head is different. The head is different from what Soundwave's head is. So, interesting. That is a change. And then here's Reflector. And here we have some Watch Robos. I think some of these got released. I had a GoBots one. And these guys look pretty close to that, but I know they're not the same. And then, of course, here we got more of the small cars. I got Bumble Jumper in a red version. I didn't know a red version was released. And I got Brawn here in the proper color. As you can see, Bumblebee, and Cliff Jumper had some sort of a strange-looking little sticker on their torsos. That would get replaced with their Autobot symbols. Very, very interesting. And we get some other odd toys that were put out. I've never seen any of these, but certainly very interesting to look at them. And imagine all the possibilities. Oh well, they say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Alright, back to Megatron now. Excuse me. You'll have to excuse my version of Megatron here. The one leg doesn't hold up very well, so he does have a tendency to collapse underneath him and fall down like that. Megatron, of course, is the leader of the Decepticons. He started out as a gladiator in many of the Cybertronian arenas. During his time as a gladiator, it forged Megatron into being a ruthless and ferocious warrior, but he also became a popular speaker and would often speak out against the ruling Council of Primes on how they treated everyone. On Cybertron, your alternate form determined what your specific jobs were. But trying to fit everybody into a specific niche does not always work. It's kind of the same way with humanity. So Megatron eventually gained enough followers to form his own faction, and they have tried to conquer Cybertron to change how the world should be. But, like with a lot of revolutions that happen, there are points where the motivation and the reasoning behind it often get lost. And that's probably why Megatron was more depicted as your standard villain, instead of one that really did have a decent message to fight under. Now, of course, Megatron did come in other forms in the toy line, but he really only got one other official release. Megatron would reappear in the toy line in 1990 as an Action Master. He would be sold with the Neutro Fusion tank. He was one of the larger toys available, but he would rank second under Optimus Prime, who, with him having a semi-truck, was a bigger toy. But many fans like to also consider Galvatron as another version of Megatron, due to the fact that Galvatron, as seen in the 1986 film, was Megatron reformatted by Unicron. However, we don't always count it that way because not all the media has portrayed Megatron and Galvatron as the same person. The tech spec bio for Galvatron avoided any references to Megatron to avoid giving out spoilers for the animated film. So, in that regard, he was created as a separate character, and some of the Marvel comics that were printed around that time also treated Galvatron as a separate character. There's a panel that's quite commonly seen on the internet of Megatron and Galvatron arguing. But of course, some of the later media has also shown how Megatron has felt being Galvatron. The War for Cybertron, no, not that version, the Prime Wars version that was put out by Machinima showed off Megatron had somehow reverted back from being Galvatron and carried post-traumatic stress from all the crimes he committed as Galvatron, mainly due to the fact that Unicron, his master, would mentally torture him whenever he disobeyed. And the torture would last until Galvatron begged for mercy. Or sometimes Unicron would let it go a little longer just to amuse himself. But in the end of that series, Megatron offered to sacrifice himself when he got a hold of the shard of Unicron that Rodimus had, in the hopes of having it vanquished, as he felt it trying to pull him back into being Galvatron. The War for Cybertron cartoon series featured an earlier Megatron and a time-traveling Galvatron. Galvatron was doing his best to try to warn Megatron of his future, in the hopes that he could steer him away from becoming Galvatron. But while he was at it, Galvatron was going to look for any means that he could use to destroy his unholy master. So all in all, Megatron does have a rather complicated history. Alright, before we go too far in, and so we don't forget, thank you Larry for handing this over, we have Megatron's tech spec card, so we'll take a look at it real quick. It is done up in purple here to show he is a Decepticon. It even says Decepticon above the picture. And this picture would be the same one featured on the front of the box. It gives his function as leader. and a quote associated with Megatron as "Peace through tyranny." Megatron combines brute strength, military cunning, ruthlessness, and terror. Aches to return to Cybertron to complete the Decepticon conquest, but only after destroying all Autobots on Earth. Plans to possess all of Earth's resources. Incredibly powerful and intelligent. Fires particle beam cannon. Can link up interdimensionally to a black hole and draw antimatter from it for use as a weapon. No known weaknesses. Now, it would have been nice to have seen him do this link up. That was never really shown very much, if at all. But of course, there's a couple extra things with Megatron that you'll get to see in a little bit that also weren't played upon. We'll take a look here at his stats on the grid. Usually we would need a decoder, but I can read the gray line without it. It gives his strength as 10, his intelligence is 10, his speed is 4, his endurance is 8, his rank is 10, his courage is 9, his firepower is 10, and his skill is 9. So, aside from being slow in his alternate form, Megatron definitely is a force to be reckoned with. Let's take a brief moment now and take a look at Megatron's accessories. We'll start with the one that is most neglected by fans, and that is the high-density infrared laser cannon. This is basically Megatron's other gun. And of course, this is the gun that also came with the other version of him that you saw earlier. As you can see, it's done up in chrome, so chrome wear is a big factor on loose samples. But also these two ends, these two bits here on the sides, are also found broken and missing on loose samples. So do be careful of that. And then, of course, we have all the extra gun accessories. Like we have an extended barrel here. Some people assume it's a silencer, and in reality, it is more of an extended barrel. It's not really a silencer, and probably wouldn't qualify as a suppressor either. It also comes apart into two pieces. You have the small piece here, and then, of course, the actual barrel itself. Yeah, there's a reason a lot of these pieces come apart, and you'll see that here in a couple minutes. First, let's show you everything. And then, of course, next up we have the scope, which often forms the fusion cannon that Megatron wields. It comes apart into three pieces. You have the end of the scope. You have the centerpiece here. Now you get a look at both sides of it. And then, of course, you have the eyepiece. These all form together. And, of course, if you are wondering, yes, there is a crosshairs inside there. So you could look through it and get a sight through there. There we go. And then, of course, we have the stock. And the stock also comes apart into three pieces. We have the base end of it, connects to the gun. We have this extension. You should see it has a post on the one side only. And then, of course, you have the actual stock itself that rests against your shoulder. And, of course, the bottom piece of it separates out. And as you can imagine, on loose samples, one or both of these are often broken off or missing. So do keep an eye out for that when you buy a loose version. Okay, I see where part of the misnomer comes from on the extended barrel here, because the instructions list it right there. 2-piece silencer. Come on, people, that is not a silencer. Alright, now, an interesting thing with all the gun parts is that they can be combined into a couple of extra weapons for Megatron to use. This is a feature that would have been nice to have had to play with. We'll take the extended barrel, remove the small piece from the one end of it, and of course come down underneath it here, and there's a post to fold out, like so. We'll get the sight, and you lock the sight in on top. We'll come here to the stock, and you will remove the one piece that connects to the gun. Inside it, you should be able to fold out a couple of handlebars. Get that other bar back out. Here we go. Then you can connect it inside, like so. And then the small piece be plugged in back here. Take the rest of the stock, you'll open this bottom portion of it, spread it out to form a tripod, and then just attach this end in. And you basically have a freestanding particle beam cannon. And yes, the handlebars do have a purpose. Megatron does have holes in his hands there. So if we can line him up just right, you can plug them in. Get that leg back out again. And there we go. Megatron's taking aim at something over at the couch. Good thing Larry's over there staying out of the way. Alright, we'll take a look now at another option that you have with Megatron as a weapon. For this one, though, we got to do an alteration to Megatron himself. His gun barrel here at his hip needs to be folded so it points out his back. We'll take the extended barrel, remove the small piece again. Take the... Okay, there is another weapon that we can make. For it, you gotta move Megatron's gun barrel so it points out his backside. Trying to make sure he'll stay standing for us this time. Alright, we got the extended barrel. We've removed the small piece out of it again. Lower the post down on it, and you'll attach the small piece facing the opposite way. So this is the end that connects to Megatron, so it needs to point that way. Come up here to the front of the barrel, and you can attach the sight to it. There we go. Got the sight attached. And then, of course, we only take apart the end of the stock and attach it to the back here. And then what we have is a telescopic laser cannon. We'll go around here and you attach it into Megatron like that, and then the sight can then be pivoted to be in front of Megatron's face. I would imagine that this would be a lighter powered weapon, but would definitely get some amazing distance out of it. It's a shame these other modes of Megatrons were not really shown off. Okay, let's transform Megatron now. Well, for starters, we should look at his articulation, even though he hardly has any worth mentioning. You can rotate Megatron's arms all the way around at the shoulder, and he will fold flat. His legs can spread out to the sides a bit, and you do have knee articulation. And that's pretty much about it. So unfortunately, Megatron really doesn't have a lot of posability, but back in the day, that was never an issue. To transform him, we start by coming here and we push his fists inside his forearms, and then close his arms up all together. And now we'll take his head and attach it and the piece that his arms are on. Fold it backwards. His arms can then be rotated around a bit. So they're on some independent control arms. So bring them together. Bring them up together and they snap together like so. We'll come here to his body. You're going to lower his chest area. Swing the gun barrel towards the back and bring it forward so that it can be connected in there like so. Rotate the chest so that it's now lined up. Then you can connect the arms to the back. This left arm, where his left arm would be. Fold his head up against the arms. Then we kind of fold his legs back, secure them against everything. Connect his legs together. Push the feet in. And then slide the legs together to form the grip. And then there you have it. Megatron is in his alternate mode of a Walther P-38. He even has that etched in here, just like on a real Walther. Unfortunately, since my Decepticon symbols have kind of faded on this toy, that's about the only thing that would tell it that he's a fake gun, other than the Japanese and Takara stuff here on the side. I bought this at a toy and comic show in Columbus a number of years before I started the channel. My brother was there at that show to meet Ray Park, who had just played Snake Eyes in the G.I. Joe film Rise of Cobra. And that's where I got this. I was sitting in an area trying to fiddle with him in the bag because there was a cop not too far from me. I certainly did not want to make the day any more exciting. Up here, here's the hole that on that other P-38 that I showed you earlier. This would be where you would load the bullets in. So they would go in singly and then you would pull the trigger to fire. This feature has, of course, been neutered. You can still pull the trigger though, but you're not going to get anything but air. Excuse me a moment, I have company. Alright, now that everybody's left, we can get back onto Megatron here. So this is his P-38 mode. Of course, to complete the look that we all know and love, we gotta slide the scope on, like so. Attach the stock, like so. And slide the barrel on, like so. Make sure that the regular barrel is down and secured tightly. And there we have it. Megatron in his classic form. Of course, some of the media, especially one of the catalogs, did display him in a shorter form, where they would attach it to the stock like so. That should be the other way around, since the stock doubles as the tripod. And in this way, this was one of the ways that it was used in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. So I've seen a lot of drawings and pictures of it being used in this way. So, there we have it, folks. That's Megatron's classic gun mode. Certainly a treat for the eyes. Get this removed for a second while we quickly put him back in the other mode. Whoop. You can see, pretty simple and quick process. Of course, I've done this many times, so... So my Megatron is pretty poor, in pretty poor shape. Whoever previously owned him must have loved having him. Alright, Megatron is back. Now, of course, like with Optimus Prime that we showed not too long ago, Megatron does have quite a number of toys of him available. Of course, to cover each and every one of them would take a video in unto itself. And, of course, I don't have all of them. But we will show off a few of the more recent ones that I do have. To compare next to the G1, here we have the Titans Return Megatron, which featured him as a triple changer. Became a tank and a jet fighter. But of course, this Megatron also shared the mold with Blitzwing. So that explains some of it. And here we have Megatron in his siege form. One that was done up somewhat more reminiscent to his cartoon appearance. And giving him a Cybertronian tank form. Of course, this version, like with the Optimus Prime, it would get re-released as a Walmart exclusive without the battle damage paint and in somewhat brighter colors to more match his cartoon appearance. The mold for that one would be partially reused to make Megatron's next toy, his Earthrise toy. Now, while Megatron and Prime came out around the same time in Siege, when it came to Earthrise, Optimus came out first, and Megatron didn't appear until much later in the year. So, kind of a disappointment for Megatron fans. And then, of course, when Kingdom rolled around, like with Prime, Megatron got a smaller form. But again, it also worked out well, especially with us getting the Ark as a playset. So we could have the Decepticons and Autobots lay in dormancy. That came out in Kingdom, but when Legacy came around, they got a little inventive with the mold. While they used the same mold for that core class Megatron, it was reissued in Generation 2 colors. Well, not a perfect representation of the G2 toy, it is a serviceable one, especially if you were around for the G2 era. And of course, we have a few studio figures. As you've probably seen on my channel, I have quite a few of Studio Megatron. Like here, we have his appearance from Revenge of the Fallen. I'm sorry I don't have the one from the original Transformer film. But of course, to go along with that, I have his appearance in the Universal Studios ride. This one was sold for a time exclusively at Universal Studios, but would later be sold at certain retailers. I picked this one up in particular at a GameStop. And of course, that one shares the mold with the Dark of the Moon appearance of Megatron. This would be Megatron's final appearance in the live-action films until he was rightfully named back in The Last Knight. He appeared in Age of Extinction as Galvatron. Why they changed the name back, nobody knows. And then, of course, lastly, for studio figures, we have just done up back at Christmas. We have War for Cybertron Megatron. And as we can see with a lot of them, they do carry over some of the hallmarks that were started in the Generation 1 version. So now we get down to my thoughts. Megatron has always been a controversial figure because of him becoming a real gun. There's no two ways to hide it. I mean, Hasbro did try, as the toy did garner the controversies. I'm guessing he was part of the reason they went with the rub signs in 1985. That was one way to do a distinction, but by the time they got around to his mail-away, the gun would have an orange tip, like most toy guns are supposed to have nowadays. A friend of mine that I knew a long time ago did carry a P-38 and did spook somebody with it because they thought that she was pulling out the toy until she showed the one feature that a real one can do that Megatron can't do, and that's be cocked. Due to the controversies that have come with toy guns over the years, it's made it harder to make Megatron again as a gun. Even one as a Nerf gun, Hasbro has to go through a lot of hoops just to make it happen. That's why there's been very few over the years that have become a gun again. And that's probably going to be one of the biggest hang-ups for the Studio 86 series. There are a lot of fans that are going to be hoping that we'll get a cartoon-accurate Megatron toy. But the problem with that being is he was still a gun. And he'll still have to become the gun to be cartoon-accurate. So that's going to be a tough issue to get around. They'll probably go with the standard fallback that's been Megatron's alternate form, a tank. But so far he's not been announced yet. This toy is a classic, and of course if you want one, I would certainly suggest you try to seek one out. He really isn't that hard to find. But do remember that having him does come with a responsibility to make sure that he is not used in a way to cause fear in other people. He's just a toy, and he's just for collecting purposes. Nothing more. And that's my review of Generation 1 Megatron. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Please do remember that if you like the content that we feature on this channel, I would appreciate a like, a share, and a comment. And please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. This is Sparkster1701 saying I will catch you all later.